Hi, Kara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I'm excited that we have come this a full glorious circle, and I've been reflecting on how we met and the journey that we've been sharing over the past over a year, about a year and a half, a little more than that.
Yeah, coming up on
Uh,
2 years, I think, in the fall.
oh my gosh, that's exciting. That's a good chunk of life that we've shared. Let's go back to how we met. Would you share where you were in your life, in your sense of your own well-being? What thoughts, what desires were present, and what circumstances and obstacles, and what inspired you ultimately to get on this journey of healing PSD?
Oh my goodness, that's quite a story. But I think what I'm going to start with actually is a very literal story of what I was doing and how I like met you, because I very much like remember the exact moment. I was in my office, and I at the time was an executive and engineer with a company that I was one of the owners at, and I had been on a path for a long time of figuring out whether that was really what I wanted. Actually, knowing that that really wasn't what I wanted to be doing, but not really knowing, how to move out of that and into something else that I was dreaming about, which was to start a coaching and consulting business of my own, more around working with women than working with engineering projects and some of that, kind of a big change in life. And so I'd been exploring that for a while, and I was sitting at my desk on Facebook in the middle of the day in the workday, which I think a lot of people do when they're struggling in their workplace and maybe feeling unfulfilled and need a little break. And I was just scrolling through actually, a Facebook group that we were both in. And I read a post that you had put up talking about basically patriarchy stress disorder. And I think you used that terminology, but it was
Yes.
very early it was before the
Mhm.
book was even written. And you
Yeah.
were looking for women to talk to about this book and about basically feeling exactly like I was feeling in that moment when I was sitting at my desk trying to escape my life through
Mm.
scrolling through Facebook. And it resonated so strongly and just so deeply with me in that moment. I was like, oh, I definitely need to, talk to this woman about her book. And I think I probably messaged you or something, or responded to your message thread, and we set up a call for that same week, and actually discovered in the first few minutes of our call that we were both in Tucson, Arizona, which I was like, woohoo, love Tucson, and was blown away that just by happenstance we had run into each other like that. And of course, I believe it was all part of the grand plan of the way life comes together. But as soon as I knew you were in Tucson, I was like, oh, we have to meet. I want to, like, that's meant to be. And so there's the literal story there, but also very much the story of I was so in the exact place of the woman that you were talking to in that
Mm.
post and in your book, that it just like landed for me. And it was instantaneous for me to recognize myself and just be like, she has something to say that I need to understand.
Mm.
So that's the story. And the
Yeah.
larger context, of course, is there's a lot to unpack there. But
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'm so grateful for the breadcrumbs that have connected our journeys and that immediate recognition that you had. What was it that created that immediate recognition? What was going on in the world, right? How you were feeling in yourself, in your life, that was like, oh yeah, this is speaking to me. This is PSD. Like, I didn't know it a moment ago, but the moment I saw it, this is it.
it was the story of, and I don't even remember what the words were that were in that post, but it was the story of a woman who is high achieving and burns herself out trying to meet expectations and just be all of these things she feels like she needs to be. And I had been on that path and had been recognizing that over a number of years, and kind of had already been on my own healing path. And there was the terminology of jailbreak, I think, that really caught my attention,
Mm.
because I had, like I mentioned, I had been thinking about this change and thinking about what was meaningful to me in life, but I hadn't been able to make the decision, to leave this world that I had known for so many years. I mean, I practically grew up in this company. I was there for more than 20 years. I was one of the owners. I mean, it's a big shift to make. And that
Yeah.
phrase jailbreak, and just kind of that recognition of there's something to break away from and a way to open up into something else, that
Mm.
just really felt like it was very important to me at that moment, because I hadn't been able to do that on my own. I'd been stuck. I'd been there for, thinking about leaving and whether I wanted to move on for a really long time, but just never was able to really make that great leap and, take the big step. And so I just had that sense that, okay, this has come into my life right now. I'm in this conversation with myself, maybe something like what she has to say is really where I need to be to take my next step. And
Mm.
that was kind of how I came to you, I think,
Yeah.
was being ready to make that next step, but knowing I needed the support and, the whatever it was that I hadn't been able to do for myself in my other personal development work, to get there.
Mm. Yeah, that recognition is powerful when there's that resonance that sends ripple effects, and the inner knowing goes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I need this. This is a good step. This is the step I need. And as you were making that step, you had already been on the journey. You had already been exploring the mind, body, spirit interplay. You have been a seeker. And um, what was it that you were looking to shift within yourself? How you were feeling in your own skin, how you were feeling day to day in terms of your happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction. If you could share with us that place where you were in those terms.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. I had been doing a lot of my own work, and I'd really come to the recognition of kind of my disconnection from my body, my lack of embodiment, and that was something that I had been purposeful about over the few years prior to that. But I think what I didn't realize, and I only know this looking backwards, was that I was just stuck in a place of fear and frozenness, that that the embodiment types of things that I had been doing, while they were great for helping me to kind of heal some of the just the I don't know, the damage of the world on my
Yeah.
psyche and the way that I related to my body, and my femininity and my emotions and all of that stuff. I was just frozen and stuck, and I didn't know what I needed was the work that you do around, around fear and around emotional, like, connectivity, and really be
Mm.
just being in touch with all of that stuff. So I can look backwards now from a couple years later and go, okay, that's what it was, but I had no idea at the time
Mm.
that was the process of, like, kind of thawing out that I needed to go through to really be more in touch with myself.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, there's that distinction, right? We don't know what we don't know. And I remember when I first got into that mind body journey, which my gateway drug was yoga. I didn't get on the yoga mat to heal myself. I got on the yoga mat to get a tighter butt. And I didn't know what was going to come of it. So whatever gets us on the journey, right? The starting point, we have one kind of set of desires, and then things unfold. What has unfolded for you over the course of this journey? Where do you see yourself shift as you look back, almost like yourself now meeting yourself at that point? when we met. What's different as they're looking at each other and right, knowing about each other's lives? What's different?
What's different? That is a great question. And there's a lot of intangibles, but I guess I can say one of the things that's probably most easy for me to articulate is I just have a lot more ease around who I am and how I show up in the world, and
Mm,
my comfort with myself and what I have to offer. Um, and a lot of that is unpacking a lot of the kind of patriarchal stuff that got piled on me over 20 plus years in a male dominated career field, that I just needed to really have that support to unpack and unwind a lot of that messaging, and value who I was for who I was, instead of for a lot of those things that I had tried to tried to fit into a set of criteria, or tried to just be a particular way because that's what I thought the world expected of me. Just being more comfortable with myself for what I have to offer and who I am, and just all of that. And then I think there's also the big piece of your work around pleasure and around desires and around really connecting with what's important to us
mm,
at a very fundamental level, not just like this makes me happy and this makes me sad, but what do I really, really want out
yeah.
of my life, out of my relationships, out of like what do I want to feel like, and how do I want my work and my home life and all of that stuff to come together, and just how do I want that to all unfold, and what do I want it to feel like. And like I hadn't thought about those things. And it's really
Mhm.
an amazing journey when you start to actually feel into all of that, to recognize like what's important to you and what feels good and what doesn't feel good, that maybe you had been not at all acknowledging didn't feel good. And then you get into it and you really experience it, and it's like, oh yeah, now I'm noticing all of this stuff that, like, we talked, like I was tolerating, right? And
Mm,
what was I tolerating, and really just unpacking a little at a time all of those questions about what did I really want, and what was I tolerating, and what's important to me, so that I could then kind of put life back together in a way that just felt so much more nourishing and fulfilling, and oriented towards my pleasure and what I wanted, but also in a way that allows me then to be really giving out into the world from that. So
mm. That's beautiful, Kara, and more nourishing and fulfilling and orienting what how you show up in the world and what you're putting out into the world from that place of authentically knowing what you authentically desire and what you authentically need versus what we think we should want and we should need and just tolerating the circumstances that come with it. Just like we don't know what we don't know, we unfortunately or whatever it's just that how it's set up, we come to know about ourselves and our lives through the external things. And especially having had success within that world of external things created by patriarchy, built not around your authentic desires, but it's almost harder from that point to begin that deconstruction process,
it
because
really is,
that yeah, you
because
you
you
have you
don't,
have been winning, right?
yeah,
You like from the external markers from the outside looking in, you've reached all kinds of success, beautiful family, top of your career, like what else could you possibly want?
yeah, yeah. We don't get taught to ask those questions the way that you ask them in the work that you do. That we really learn what success is from a whole different set of criteria, and you don't know why it doesn't feel right, why it doesn't feel good.
Mm,
You just know it doesn't, until somebody starts like you, starts putting all of that, kind of framework out there and goes, well, here's why it doesn't feel good. And, here's a question you could ask yourself that you'll get at what really does feel good. And, like, we're not taught to do that in our culture, specifically because our culture doesn't want us to ask those questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty mind-blowing when you start asking those questions, because you're just looking at the world a whole different way.
Yeah. And when we're just not feeling good, what comes to mind is like we feel guilty and we start looking at what's wrong with me? Why can't I feel good? And so that's where
Yeah.
we start searching for, okay, maybe, and some people may go the route of, maybe I need a bigger house, or maybe I need to to change any other external circumstances, or maybe I need to be on medication because I'm not feeling good, right? Like all the external things that the society tells us we need to. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share, like your first, like even way before we met, right? Your first like awakenings to, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling good. Like where did you turn to try to fix the situation?
Well, I started with the traditional route of, I was really depressed and I ended up on antidepressants, and I was on and off of antidepressants for many, many years. Um, which came on, kind of as that postpartum, just learning to be a mother and a working mom, and a
Yeah.
responsible working mom. And somewhere in there, how you raise children with your partner sometimes can be really challenging. So, there was therapy and there was antidepressants, and there was this ongoing period of life that I just didn't feel good, and I didn't know why. And I just thought that was life, that was parenting, that was marriage, that was, being a professional and trying to balance all of those things, and feeling very unsuccessful at balancing all of those things. Um, and and my one of my pivot points was that I decided to take a coach training program, and
Mm.
that was really the beginning of my, like, kind of that recognition of embodiment, and the fact that I'm more than just a brain that produces work and, does parenting and wife things in her spare time. That just really shifted my perspective of who I was and what I had to offer in the world in a pretty profound way. And that was the beginning of that journey towards, like, oh, there is a whole another way of looking at life that I,
Yeah.
had no idea was even out there. And that was a few years before we started working together, that part of my life happened, and that, those changes started happening. But like I
Mhm.
said, I had been in that kind of that question and that place of questing or journeying for a while, and knew that I really in my heart wanted to do something else, and I hadn't really felt comfortable or felt strong enough in myself to take that leap and actually leave the familiar and launch off into something that, felt very
Yeah.
different. And so that was another one of those major pivot points when I connected with you, and recognized, like, okay, this is a way to make that shift, and, a way to really start to look at things again, continuing to look at things differently, so that I can keep making that pivot, that change in life. And
Mm.
but
I so appreciate you sharing, Kara. This is something that I really want to communicate through your story, through my story, through all our lived experiences on this journey, to anyone who is on this journey and watching right now, and maybe thinking, "Oh my gosh, like I've dealt with things already. I've been to therapy, and I've been on this personal growth journey. I've read self-help books. I've been to workshops. Why am I not done?" Like or it hasn't worked for me, or maybe there's that feeling of what's wrong with me, because I've done these things and I'm still not feeling that ease that you were speaking to earlier, the ease of living and showing up and being in touch with authentic desires. and being able to make changes in the external circumstances that feel so unmovable sometimes. Yeah, feel so big and feel like, okay, that's just my life. So, what can you say to somebody who is in that place right now?
Mm. Well, what occurred to me when you were talking was the external circumstances change when your internal circumstances change. I mean, that's been my experience all along, that the work that we're doing internally and with kind of all of that stuff that comes up and all of our history and our, ancestry and just all of those pieces, like, it's not about changing the external world. It really is about changing the internal world, and the stuff on the external world like just follows along. I mean, it really does. So um, that's been my experience, and I've seen that with so many other of
Yeah.
the women in your group, and in some of the other programs that I'm in, that it really is the internal world that affects the external world.
Hmm. Yes, it's been my experience, as you well know, as well, and continues to be every time there is a bigger invitation to another level of expansion of what wants to come through. There is a deeper dive into deeper layers of trauma. There is a deeper invitation for healing, be it ancestral, collective, or personal. So I'm on this journey as well every day. Oh, would you share with us some glimpses into the changes in external circumstances that you've been experiencing through your internal changes?
Yeah. Yeah, and I I will say, like, we're never done on this journey. So I
Yes.
am at a place right now, um, and I'm really happy with the changes that have happened in my external circumstances. I did move on from that organization that I was with. I have started my own new business. Um, it's been an interesting journey this past year-ish, deciding what that was really going to be about. When I left, I thought I had a much better sense of that than I actually did. And the roller coaster of the entrepreneurial journey was one I got to ride along with everybody else that goes out on their own to do something in the world. But that's starting to come together now in a way that feels really good, and I feel like I'm bringing all of the things I value and I have to offer into that work in a way that makes me really, happy and satisfied. And yeah, I mean, that's where I am right now, and feeling a lot more ease with home relationships and just life in general, I would say. Although, our work was focused a lot on kind of my work and my business and my, getting that part of my world where I wanted it to be.
Hmm. And I'm so excited for this journey that um, I have had the privilege of witnessing, and how I've seen you unfold every step of the way. It's like more and more of your light shining through, more and more. It's like those layers of, like, shields that we've had to create to survive in this world that is not exactly friendly to women and oftentimes hostile, right? So we've had to put filters on so many aspects of our authentic expression, and seeing these filters come off, melt off you, those veils, every step of the way, it has been so joyful and rewarding. And hearing your authentic voice get stronger and more focused, more and more aligned with your authentic desires, and broadcasting more and more powerfully into the world has been so beautiful. And seeing that, sometimes seeing, they would seem like small things, but they're huge things, like
Mhm.
joy in everyday life.
Yeah.
Right? Can you speak to that? That the joy in everyday life, and what's different? Kind of, again, rewinding back, um, before you started this work, or this leg on your journey, and now, what's different in your everyday life experience?
Well, one of the things that I feel like is most noteworthy, and this came up at one of your early retreats, I think, one of the exercises we did around desire and what your authentic desires were, I just had come up like something so simple as I wanted to wake up in the morning and feel happy, and I do now, and I wasn't at that time. I mean, that was actually like this really aspirational thing to wake up in the morning and feel happy and be excited about life and, and feel good about what I was getting up to do. And that is certainly something that I feel like, okay, I've realized that desire. And, that's not small, even though that's a very small thing. That's not at all small. And of course, all of the other desires that I've put into words and into action in the last couple of years have, some of them have been pretty amazing big things. And I appreciate you appreciating my kind of blossoming and seeing me grow and change. And I would I'm surprised by myself sometimes and what I'm capable of and what I, can do and what comes out of me and up for me. And so it's really neat to be in that place in life where you can surprise yourself with what you're capable of and just be really like, wow, that's awesome. I just did that.
Ooh, here's some more of that, surprising yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Delighting yourself with what you can do. I'm so happy to hear that this desire, it really stayed with me when you said that. I remember you getting in touch with that authentic desire. We did a practice at the retreat and you sharing it and how big that felt. I know we're conditioned to think, oh no, personal happiness, waking up happy, like it doesn't matter, and how deeply it does actually matter, because it's our life. It's our life is made of these moments. And I'm so delighted that there's been this shift and unfolding there. And I'm wondering, looking back at what has been helpful to you in this program, journeying with an intimate group of women and doing this work of healing PSD, what have been some active ingredients for you? What has been helpful and supportive in the group, in the way the program was um, arranged? You mentioned the retreat. Yeah, if you could speak to that.
So much, so much of it has been really incredible and really, really just amazing. The retreats are really profound, especially that group, that container of other women just holding each other and supporting each other through some, really deep stuff. I mean, that is not something that you get in a lot of places in life. And to have that kind of connection and support and really to to resonate with each other on the things that we're going through and feeling and recognizing that it's not just me that feels this way, right? That there's this whole other group of people, and there's tons of people out there in the world that have these same experiences, that are feeling these same things, and we get to put that to words and then feel that in the group container. That's huge. I appreciated very much our one-to-one work because, like we've talked about before, I like to process and I like to kind of philosophize, and so to have somebody that that could understand what I was going through and what I was trying to bring into the world was incredibly helpful. And then, of course, you have a just ton of different practices and the meditations and visualizations and all of those tools that go along. And those have also been, those are just foundations, right? Those are the fundamental pieces of that kind of unfreezing and coming to know ourselves differently process that I think that are very important in this sort of thing. Like, it can't just be talking, it really needs to be embodying, and it needs to be doing some activities and some practices that help to bring that all into the body as well as in the mind. So
Kara, thank you so much for your courage the courage that it took to embark on this journey, and the courage that it took every step of the way when things this journey is not smooth sailing, right? It's not
No,
like you
it's a
like
challenge.
you sign up and it's a luxury ride. There are a lot of deep dives, and things feel turbulent, and we feel feels. And
Yeah,
so I'm so appreciative, so grateful for your courage and for the opportunity to journey together.
yeah. Thank
And I'm
you.
delightful. Yeah.
It's very vulnerable work, which is hard for those of us that are very strong, armored up individuals. And I think a lot of the women that you work with and seek to work with are very strong, powerful people who don't have an easy time with vulnerability and with diving deep and with really letting those parts out. And that's the value of the work.
So you're saying it's okay to do that, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that is where it's at.
Thank you for speaking to the strength, right? Of course, those
Yeah.
women who have been successful, accomplished a lot, in great part, it was due to the strength, and the strength came through a lot of armoring and defending the vulnerable parts. And so the work invites us to look underneath to reclaim our authenticity, authentic parts. And that may feel scary and turbulent and exactly the opposite of what the mind wants to do.
Yep. But it's safe enough.
And it continues, right? Every step of the way we get a little deeper, there is more and then it turns out to be worth it.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us from your journey. It's really precious, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, Kara, for being who you are, and courageously shining your light into the world and doing this work to be able to shine and show up and being your pleasure and happiness even more.
Well, thank you. Thank you too for bringing it to the world.